Hello, everybody. Hello to all our viewers, podcasters, and to everyone who's viewing Izwe Kamoya. And today's episode is special, although it's our last, because instead of reflecting on what we've already done, we're looking ahead. We're about to begin our research journeys, and today's conversation is about how theory is potentially or will shape the way we're thinking about that process.
Yeah.
Any take on that?
We've spent weeks reading dense theory and trying to make sense of what climbing really is. Now we're standing on the edge of something new. Our research projects. I'll be focusing on the Buffalo's Dry Landfill Site Community Reforestation Program.
Okay.
And see, you're looking into formal rental market for youth in Soweto, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at that. It's exciting, but a little bit daunting too. I would like, because I'm still asking myself, and I would like all of our viewers to ask themselves this question: like, what does it mean to research responsibly? Because that's what this episode is about. How do you use thinkers like Foucault, Watson, Goals, and even Bailing's 1999 research on planning technologies, so that to help frame our starting point within our researches. I don't know if you have anything to add on to my statement, because you have to reflect on these, even with our previous episode, we have to really reflect on how do we take the theory that we have learned into our researches.
Yeah, before we get into it, maybe you could give us a quick overview of your research.
My research, for those who don't know, is currently underway. I'm still waiting for ethics. Yeah.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, that's the thing. So I'm investigating how financial screening practices, things like credit checks, employment verification, deposit requirements, all these different criteria, how does it affect the youth, young people, access to formal rental housing in Soweto, from an age of 18 up until the age 35. And often we know that housing system has a tendency of being unequal, but I want to look at what could potentially be a gatekeeping mechanisms that make that inequality feel like a rule book, And my methods include semi-structured interviews, document analysis, and even site observation, just to get a sense of the overall study area which I'm focusing in terms of my research. So
interesting. Well, I'm exploring the perceptions of beneficiary participation in the Buffalo's Dry Reforestation Project. It's a climate mitigation project, but I'm interested in the social side. I'm wanting to look at how community members are empowered, or are they just absorbed into a project that's already written for them. I'll be doing interviews and tracing the participatory structures over time.
And moving forward, I would also like us to learn from each other in our early reflections, because what's interesting is how both our projects, they end up asking, who gets to belong in a space,
Exactly.
And not just physically, but economically, socially, and even political and symbolically, how does one belong within these projects?
And who gets to decide who belongs? But I think Foucault can help us with that. His ideas about power and subjectivity remind us that participation or access isn't neutral. Like in your case, you might be included in housing, but only if you behave a certain way. In mine, the same applies to the reforestation beneficiaries. You participate, but within tightly measured and managed boundaries.
And I feel like that's where our article readings, Krizek's 2009 came to me, thinking about that, because it asks us if there's room for evidence-based practice in urban planning, because it problematizes the idea that planning decisions are always guided by neutral data. It pushes us to ask us essentially about whose evidence matters, whose gets ignored. Yeah, well, that's essential when thinking about youth facing barriers to access these formal houses and whatnot.
Yeah, and Rethor et al. 2016 reminds us that smart planning often privileges those who are already digitally or economically legible, because it critiques how technological systems are being integrated into urban planning. For Buffelsdry, it cautions against assuming that tech-based systems can truly reflect or include marginalized voices.
Yeah, I think also I would like us to think critically about planning tools and the politics of legitimacy and whatnot. Yeah.
Let's talk methods for a moment. Well, I started out all excited about participatory mapping, and then I realized, was I mapping for people or was I mapping over them?
I don't know. That's a tricky one, especially when you do these strategic spatial planning projects. I don't know. I felt the same tension. I planned out structured interviews, but now I'm learning, or rather, I'm leaning into story-based methods. It's not just about what people say.
Yeah.
It's more of how they say it and what's left unsaid. Like Herrnstein's 2005 critique of imperialism, is helping me ask whether I'm capturing data or I'm just filtering people through my lens, because he challenges the illusion of objectivity in data. It shapes how I engage my participants, not as just subjects, but as knowers. Yeah.
Well, that's why I've also been thinking about Adolfsson, 2015. They write about how people with cognitive disabilities engage with planning technologies, because it shows how planning tools assume a normative user. It encourages us to develop inclusive research methods that would accommodate difference.
Yeah, I think to add on that, even policies. When I started analyzing lease agreements just to try to get a sense of my research, it was clear, planning doesn't just live in the zoning map. It lives in application forms, it lives in interview questions, the small print, I feel like that should be taken into consideration when one takes in when doing the researches and all. I feel like that also applied to you.
Exactly. And Bolling et al. 99 is a useful reminder of how computational tools like genetic algorithms in urban planning can prioritize technical optimization over social values, because it critiques technocratic dominance. It warns us not to over-rely on planning tools, as they are detached from people's lived experiences.
Okay, I would like us also, having said that, I would like us to also bridge the gap within our research teams, because I like to believe the essence of this episode is just to help us unpack our researches, to understand our researches better through this discussion, but just to also create a sense of ease,
Yeah, your idea is making me rethink my own assumptions. I've been asking, are people participating? But now I want to ask, are they visible on their own terms?
Are they visible on their own terms? Yeah, that is powerful, because when we focus on what the system sees, we miss everything else, like the gig economy, income, like informal tree cultivation, like in relation to your research, it's all invisible unless as researchers we choose to see it, Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I want to challenge how we define beneficiary. The community in Buffelsdry isn't just benefiting, they are adapting, resisting, interpreting, they're scripting their own roles even when the official story ignores them.
Yeah, and to add on that, having learned budget research is also helping me in terms of, I believe the same goes for young renters out there, you know, because like they're building rental strategies through WhatsApp groups, through side hustles, and even shared leases. That's where the phenomenon of subletting comes into mind, you know. When I look at that, I see it as that they're not failing, but rather they're innovating. We just need to have a better understanding and lenses to see such initiatives and whatnot.
The informal economy.
Yeah, within the formal economy, formal rental, and even with projects that you have outlined within the
The beneficiary projects, yeah. So here we are standing at the starting line of our research. We don't have all the answers yet, but we have better questions, and that's something Foucault taught us too.
Yeah, Foucault taught us well, man. Even with, with the discipline, the punishment, you know, all of that. And it's helping me learn my research better, my theory, understanding of things as a planner, as a future practitioner. And we're learning to see power as not as domination, you know, but as design, you know, how housing is designed, you know, how projects, you know, are designed, and how subjectivities are shaped through all of that and whatnot. So yeah, that is essentially it.
Yeah. So to everyone who is listening, we hope this conversation reminds you that research is not just a process of data collection. It's political and ethical encounter.
Yeah, and maybe, I don't know, just maybe, through these scripts and silences, in the future, I hope that perhaps we'll find something that matters, you know, something that helps us plan otherwise in the near future, and even currently with our researches and whatnot.
Yeah. I agree. Well, this was it.
A beginning
and not a conclusion.
Yeah, so to everyone who was watching our episodes, our podcast and whatnot, so please do like and subscribe and write down comments in anything that you feel like we have missed within our episodes. The analytical interpretation of the things we spoke about.
Be part of the conversation.
Like, just be part of the conversation to help us move forward, and potentially to whomever is watching the podcast and the episodes to grow, you know, to grow and have a sense of discipline in moving forward within our planning. That is the core essence of Izukamoya, man, you know. Yeah. Spirit lives within the city. So I don't know. It's been a pleasure,
It's been a pleasure, Zia.
Yeah, hey, you can reflect. So guys.
See you guys.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have a reunion somewhere in the near future. I don't know. So cha-cha.